So, your first, we'll call it NDE, that's near-death experience, for those of you not sure of the acronym. Your first NDE was at 8. What happened?
It was actually in year 3, and I had a vaccination. So it was called the rubella.
And what happened?
Basically, I had a severe allergic reaction to this vaccination, and yeah, ended up in hospital.
And at 24, you had another go at death, another NDE. What happened then?
Another go. So at 24, I was a pedestrian hit by a car.
And at 35, another near-death experience.
Yeah, just one more.
This is getting old already.
Just one more. At 35, I actually had a heart attack.
Wow. Okay, so at 8, what did you experience in the hospital?
Well, at 8 years old, I would have to say that I had the most amazing experience for an 8-year-old who's actually been, what I should say first is, before I actually got to hospital, I was actually out of my body. So I wasn't currently in my body, which sort of led me to believe that I was probably dying pretty much well before my mum was able to get me to the hospital. So, so being out of my body and above my body, looking at my mother holding me, and the doctors and things like that, yeah, it was really, really confronting but free. Like, being a child, I think, and this is really important, if I knew I had a child that was ill and dying, that when you start to feel intense pain or anything that's detrimental to yourself, you actually are able to not be in a physical body. So, and that's just naturally something that happens, as I found.
So, who are you in that moment?
My spirit. So I'm actually in a spirit form, looking at my body, as I said.
So in that state of detachment, how do you feel?
Whoa. Okay, free. I don't feel anything. Totally detached from my body in the sense that I don't even care about it. It's one of the most liberating things, something that you do not even consider thinking that your body is even you, if maybe that's the best way to describe it.
So if that feeling is so awesome, why did you return?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah. All right, well, how long do we have? No. Okay, I'll try and keep this really brief because as there are 3 to go through, my mother was with me the whole time. So there was a lot of love in that room. And I was constantly there, and I was constantly seeing everything she was doing, everything the doctors were doing. And occasionally I'd get back into my body and I'd go, oh, you know, I don't like this, I want to go. And anyway, cutting that short, so you can come into your body and out of your body very freely. So that was just that point there. But basically what happened was the doctor walked in and asked to speak to my mother. obviously formally addressed her and said, "Can I please speak to you in the hallway?" And little did they know that I could actually follow them. You know, I wasn't confined into this little body that was sick and dying. I followed them into the hallway, and I heard the doctor say to my mum that, "I'm sorry, we've done everything that we can for Naomi. We're going to lose her."
Wow. And what happened next?
My mum yelled out this big, horrific, I don't even know whether I could call it a scream. It was just like this horrific, blood-curdling thing that was just like, you know, like, it probably made me feel so loved and so wanted that there was no other choice but to stay. But in saying that, I had a choice because the light was before me. So here I am in the hallway, and I'm just like, okay, what do I do? You know, because I'm like, I don't want to go back to my body, but like, I'm so detached from my body, I don't even think about my body. And I'm just focused on this part with my mum and the light. And so basically, I had the choice to go to the light, and I chose to go back to my body.
Personal question. Any regrets?
Well, what do you think?
You've had another couple of goes at it, which we'll get to.
Yeah, well, I can elaborate a bit more.
So when you returned to your body, what was the outcome and what was the aftermath of that? You were in the hospital for weeks, I think I remember, is that right?
Yeah, I pretty much had to start from scratch again. I had to repeat a year at school. I would say I could have died very easily, especially with well, I mean, I'm just sort of saying that based on the other two experiences that I've had as well. And being out of your body so long does actually, I might go into that a little bit later, but it does actually have quite an effect on the body. But hang on, where was I? Sorry.
The aftermath, you're in hospital for a few weeks, you had to repeat a year of school.
Oh yes, so the recovery process, yes. So basically I had to start from scratch, learning, but during that time I was very intuitive, and I did actually have quite a bit of intuitiveness within me when I was younger anyway. But this seemed to heighten, and I could see my mum or the doctors or the nurses in other rooms apart from my room. I was still out of my body a lot. I had non-physical beings around me that were making me laugh and dancing around and distracting me from, you know, the healing process of getting better, because yeah, it was pretty, like, if I was in my body, I didn't want to be in my body. So it was like a hard process to sort of get better. So I suppose I want to stress that if anyone is or knows of anyone, excuse me, that is a child or anyone who goes through the healing process and they have been out of their body for quite a long time, it is very distressing on the body.
Okay, so let's move on to the second near-death experience at 24.
Yeah, okay.
You were hit by a car.
Yeah.
On the Sunshine Coast.
Yep.
I also have a lot of issues with Sunshine Coast drivers. But I'm sure you can relate to that.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
What happened when you were hit by the car?
Okay. I was struck on the left side of my body, and I was pretty much split in two. So my body, which I felt, my body flung onto the car. So the car hit me and snapped my leg backwards, and I flung onto the windscreen. It, like I screamed, and it flung me onto the road. But meanwhile, my spirit must have been running because I was about 3 or 4 meters away. So I'm like, where am I? What's going on? You know, so I'm like, okay, this is pretty cool. The body's over there and there's stuff going on, but again, I'm totally detached. I don't care whatsoever about my body.
So what does that feel like, to know that your spirit?
Well, I'd love to be it every day. That's the truth. But to feel, to be it, is something that is very hard to describe, because there is no density, there is no, there's no weight, well that's density, there's no emotional feeling like we have in this 3D world. It's something that really needs to be experienced, and this is my individual experience. You know, obviously some people have had experiences, and you know, not everyone's going to have the exact same experience, but I think on the spiritual level or the consciousness level, everyone does find it very freeing and liberating, because it's not a sense of being
limitation.
A what?
Limitation.
I thought you said imitation. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. There's no. There's like none of this either. Not much movement. That is. It's very hard to describe. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question, because it's so freeing. It's just liberating, and we don't think, and we don't need to think and feel the way that we do. It's all unnecessary, really. It's so unnecessary, and it's so detrimental to the body. All of this extra stress we put on ourselves, all this extra pain we put on ourselves, all this extra emotion that we let ourselves go through. It's all energy. And that energy is just removed, and it's just so freeing. I suppose that's the best way I can describe it. Well, okay, so my spirit is totally detached from my body. So it's about 3 or 4 meters in the opposite direction. And I see this light, and I'm like, okay, cool. And before I know it, I'm not in a tunnel, I'm not in anything, I'm just in this light. And it's just bright. It's like, whoa, okay. Now I think it's that bright that, and it was gold too. So it was just bright, light, white gold. Intense. I think I would have been blinded with my eyes in this, well, that's pretty blind, no, I'm just joking. But like, it was so intense. But getting on to what happened, I was greeted by 3 human-like beings. And these 3 human beings were amazing because I already knew them. So it was just so welcoming and just, you know, fun, and we were laughing and we were joking and we were just, yeah, it was just...
So you recognise these 3 dudes straight away, didn't you?
Yeah, yeah, there was no formal introduction, there was no... yeah, it was just like, hey, how you going? You know, like...
What happened? What did they say?
Well, it was all telepathic, so there was no words spoken, and there was another language, but I don't remember it now, but at the time I understood it and everything like that. But so what happened was, while I was there, it was just amazing. Like I said, I knew them. They were so friendly. It was just amazing. I didn't want to go. It was just like, pour me a cup of tea, but there was no such thing as tea there. So, you know, I was wanting to get comfortable, you know. So I was pretty comfy. Anyway, one of them in particular got a scroll, really huge, like huge scroll, and they were sort of floating up in the corner, you know, and I was just like looking at them and still talking, you know, and didn't feel threatened, nothing. I was just still laughing and whatnot. And then all of a sudden this scroll comes just, you know, flying across the table. And well, we weren't, it wasn't like it was alarming or anything, but it was just like, okay, cool. And then we're talking, pointing and talking to all these different symbols. And it was all about my life and about my journey. And well, basically I'll cut it a bit short because I am talking quite a bit, aren't I? So
that's actually the point.
Well, I still have to talk about another one, don't I?
Well, apparently. So they showed you a symbol. Tell everyone about the symbol.
Yeah, sure. So basically there was one symbol that I was that we all pointed to, and that one symbol I recognised and we all spoke of. To this day, I actually understand it now, but when I came back into the physical world, I didn't actually know what it meant. And that was part of the journey to come back, was to understand what that meant.
And what did the symbol look like?
It was actually the Star of David with a circle.
Okay, and when Naomi was telling me this, she explained to me the six-pointed star, and I immediately got out some yoga text and showed her the symbol for the heart chakra, Anahata chakra. And Anahata in Sanskrit means unstruck, indestructible, because it's referring to a part of us that is eternal, untouched. And she recognised it straight away. So it's the symbol, the six-pointed star in yoga was the same thing, and Naomi recognised it straight away. So you can see the links, and we're joining the dots there, and it was quite powerful to see you see that for the first time.
Yeah, definitely, because actually a lot of different religions or different people have different you know, meanings for that Star of David, or that six-pointed
star.
Yeah, so, and some of them don't have the circle and some do, and yeah, so it's a process also of eliminating and finding out what it means to you.
And 6 points is the two triangles overlapping. And it's the significance in yoga of 3 chakras below, 3 chakras above, and the heart being the centre. Like the bridging point between the lower 3 and the upper 3, and that's why the heart is so important. It's a kind of critical aspect of our being. So, what happened when with the recovery and the operations that followed, because you did return to your body, and how bad was the aftermath?
Well, this one was pretty extraordinary. Coming back to a very disfigured body was pretty intense. Looking at my body, you know, a snapped leg, which I almost lost, by the way. My arm was over my head. I was totally disfigured. I had lost hair, I had blood everywhere from head to toe, and there was a male with me who actually helped me on the side of the road because I was on my own, and he was just covered in blood from head to toe. And yeah, and so anyway, the ambulance was there, pretty much reviving me because I was blue, and I went into theatre pretty much straight away and had a leg operation.
Okay, so it was pretty serious, wasn't it? They told you that it took a long time to walk again, and didn't they tell you that you wouldn't be able to walk again? And
Yeah. Well, first of all, I nearly lost my leg, my left leg. If the bone had snapped, I snapped my tibia and fibula. If the bone had snapped any lower, I would have lost my leg completely. But during the surgery too, waking up and not being able to feel your leg is pretty intense. And I didn't take that very well. But also being told 7 years later again, when I went and had more tests on my spine and basically my body, they still said, we don't understand how you're walking. And I said, well, I do, because I am.
okay, so let's move on to 35. At age 35, you had a heart attack. Tell us about that experience.
Well, that was pretty painful. I was on my own, but I think with the heart attack more so was it was quite sudden and severe and quick, but very painful. And with that one, I had a very profound. Okay. It's like, whoop. Okay, I was like, am I too far ahead? You know, I actually split into 3 parts. So I split into 3 parts in each near-death experience, because we have a physical body, we have a spiritual body or spiritual being, and we also have our consciousness. And how you define this is I was able to see, my consciousness was able to see my spirit, and my spirit was able to see my body and my spirit. So that proves also that we're actually 3D to me. Going back to what happened.
So you basically had a heart attack,
split into 3.
Yeah, and you went back home.
Yes,
Yeah.
so I split into 3. My physical body stayed in the hospital. My spirit was so attached to being at home that I actually went home, and my consciousness actually went to the 5th dimension.
And you went home because you weren't too happy what was happening in hospital, were you?
No, well this is what I mean, attachment. And attachment is really something that, you know, I don't recommend to anyone, and it's something, you know, when I say that, I mean like we can be attached to something as little as like clothing or a car or a house, you know, things like that. And it's so good to be detached as much as possible from anything that's physical, because we aren't physical. Really, in a sense. We're here in a physical body for an experience. So basically, yeah, I was attached to home, and my spirit felt safe at home. So here I am, split into 3 pieces, and like going through these 3 different lives. And it was just the most profound experience to integrate into my consciousness even now, you know, because it only happened just over 2 years ago.
So what happened when you went home?
So when I went home, obviously I had to try and find out how to get back to my body. So I went home, and basically my spirit reenacted safety, a safety net for me to feel safe at home. And then after a while I was sort of like, oh, okay, well, something's not quite right here, because it just doesn't feel right or real. And then something happened, and I can't really explain it, but I realized that I was a spirit and I wasn't actually a physical body. And something told me that I was stuck and I had to get back to my body. And something, but I won't go into that. So basically I had to go through this journey of trying to get back to my body. And it's not that easy, trust me, especially when your consciousness is somewhere else as well. So my consciousness is actually on another mission doing something in the 5th dimension. And the reason I know that it was my consciousness was because it was actually sort of like in my ear, but it wasn't, and it was very small, and it was like this telepathic communication between about 5 or 6 beings, and I was actually aiding them in helping them to understand what was going on. So it was sort of like a mission, I would say, or some kind of thing that I had to do. You know, there was no getting out of this until I actually knew with this one was pretty easy actually, the consciousness, because it actually told me, or I felt the feeling when I was actually leaving, to go back to my body with my consciousness. And that was when I was talking to a specific being, and it was one of the last of the 5 or 6, I think, and it was crying. It was very distressed, and that's when I knew and felt, because it felt it too, that I was leaving. And he was saying, I don't want you to leave. And there was basically love involved there. I don't know how I'm going to, you know, keep on without you, you know.
This guy was in like the 5th dimension or something, is that right?
Yeah, well, I could physically see them all. I could physically hear them all. I could physically see everything that they were doing, everything that I needed to address with them, everything that, yeah, it was really like a movie, I suppose. I could see everything, I could hear everything, but I wasn't actually there, but I was. So I was like in 6 different places at once, and able to aid all these people at once.
And then you went back to the hospital and you had some paranormal powers basically.
In the hospital? Well, when I finally got my spirit and my consciousness back to my body, with the realization of detachment, not becoming attached to things, and also realizing that love is a lot more important than we give it credit for. Love is not control, and love is not manipulation. It goes a lot further than any one of us can actually speak of until they have expressed it. But going back to the hospital, I would say it would have had to have been a very big experience that I think I was out of my body, you know, a little bit too long, because when I did go back to my body, it was very, very distressing. It was so distressing that I couldn't hear properly, I couldn't function properly, I couldn't walk even. I remember a doctor coming in, and mind you, I was coming in and out of my body a lot too, but I knew that I had to go back to my body because I'd been away from it for so long, and I had to make this transition back into the body to basically survive again and to integrate everything back together. And yeah, it was a really powerful journey. But during that journey, there was so much going on around me. I was able to sense or be around all the nurses, all the doctors, all the patients in the whole of the emergency ward. I knew what was happening in every single room. If I just wanted to go and see what someone was doing or just be there, I knew exactly what the prognosis was. I knew exactly what was going on. I knew even before them. And it even got to the point where I didn't know whether they were a spirit or a natural person sometimes because I was seeing so much stuff. But when I finally did get back to my body, it was really hard. They had done a lot to my body that I didn't know because obviously I wasn't fully there. So I looked at my arms and myself and as much as I could, and I was just disgusted with the way that the medical system treated me. I suppose, you know, I'm not going to put them down because they were doing what they thought was right. And I don't think that it's fair to, because we do need them for certain things in our lives. Or our lives, sorry, lives. But, you know, there's a certain agenda for everything, and people need to be aware of what actually does go on. You know, people think that we're dead or we're not in our body or we're dying or whatever. We are, but we're not actually aware of, we're actually totally aware of absolutely every single thing around us, more than you can absolutely comprehend. Like I said, I knew diagnosis, I knew prognosis, I knew, and this is coming from a body that was laying there half dead, or well, they thought I was dead.
And you knew like the guy next to you had diabetes or something like that, wasn't it?
He broke his hip.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a Sagittarian, I'm not know with details.
So yeah, he had broken his hip.
Yeah.
And there's a funny story to that, but I won't actually go into it. But I actually even knew that he needed to go to the toilet and stuff like that. And, you know, there's just these amazing things that happen that are just so liberating and challenging, and it makes the journey worthwhile. So it's not frightening, but the recovery process is terrible.
So Naomi, you've had 3 near-death experiences.
Yep.
What I'm getting is that you're a cross between Highlander and Wonder Woman. In your experience and what you've learned from dying, if your time's up? Is it a soul contract thing? Can you so-called cheat death, or is it written into your destiny? What's your thoughts on that?
When your time's up, your time's up. And trust me, if I knew, if I didn't have the feelings that I felt and knew what I knew from the other side, I would have gone in a flash. Because it's so free. I know that I'm here for a purpose. And
what's that?
To tell my story. So I hope this has benefited people in some way.
So would you like to share your tips for transitioning peacefully? The 5 how-tos.
The 5. I think I sort of have, haven't I? Or
no, for people who are kind of going through transitioning, should they go to the light? There's a sort of argument that's come up lately that you shouldn't go to the light. Is it best to just surrender to the process? Is it best to just let go and trust? What are your thoughts on advice that you can give to people?
Okay, well, my thoughts would be, when I was in the light, I was given a choice. Now, I don't know whether I would have been able to go through with the choice of if I did say yes. And this is just all honesty from my individual experience. I just want to stress that. So if I would have said, oh no, you know, that symbol doesn't mean anything to me and I'm going to come back and, and go to wherever it was that I wanted to go, you know, with family or whatever, because I have my mum that's passed over and things like that. If I wanted to do that, I think it would have had to have been my time. So I think everything that happens to us is all relevant to what happens in our lives, and our experiences define and shape who we are and give us the knowledge and the experience that we need to know to be able to transfer or to transition peacefully. So I do have a few tips of how I'm going to do it next time, but I feel that with other people it might be different, a different outcome, because our belief systems have a lot to do with what we see, feel, believe, and the outcome of our journey.
So tell us about that. What role do belief systems have in our experience of death?
Well, if I believed in God, I would see God. If I believed in Buddha, I would be met by Buddha.
What about atheists?
Yeah, sure. If I believed in aliens, I'm sure that...
Atheists.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
What do they get? What do they get? Is it like a lucky dip for them, or like?
Well, you know, Anthony, I think you might have to ask someone else that question. Okay. No, no, but like, I think, I think whatever we believe, no matter what religion, no matter what we feel, we see, we believe, we create. Simple as that. We create our own lives. We manifest our own lives. We manifest everything in our life. We live our life the way that that we have chosen to. And this is the way I chose to. And I chose to be here today to tell you all as well.
So, how do you view the physical world now? What's changed through those accumulation of those three different experiences?
The physical world to me today is a place that I would have to say has really changed my overall perception of not just one thing but everything in my life, down to, you know, who I interact with, down to my eating habits, down to my beliefs, down to anything and everything in my life. Everything has changed.
How would you describe those experiences on, you know, the metaphysical question of what is the meaning of life? I mean, to connect with the afterlife, it's crossing over and then coming back. It's an experience that I guess would change you permanently.
Definitely.
But how do you therefore review the purpose of life in general? Do you relate that to evolution, or how do you see it?
I would have to say that this is just a journey, a schooling progression. With everything else that is going on in my life, you know, I would have to say that it's just a journey for us to learn and to grow, and because we're not meant to be a physical being. That's not our true essence. Our true essence is a lot more than all of us give it credit for.
So you've mentioned body, spirit and consciousness as the three aspects of our being. How would you define these? How do you, in your experience, how do you define those different aspects?
Well, I defined how I saw them and related it to that's how I perceive it, as us being 3D in this physical world. But I suppose people don't realise how I don't even think I've got the words to describe how powerful and amazing we are. And you know, that's from a personal experience. And I think that when you go through something, you know, quite traumatic, and I don't just mean a near-death experience, I mean losing a loved one or...
Running an event?
I mean, I've seen you pretty stressed. I've seen you pretty stressed. And you've still got a bit of hair, you know, so you're doing pretty well.
Thank you. I think we'll just stick to the questions I'm asking you.
Okay, all right, you know. Sorry, okay. But like...
You were saying how amazing we were.
You are amazing. You are. Everyone in this room is amazing. Everyone. Every single one of us is amazing. We just need to recognise it and remember who we were or who we are for our true self.
And finally, would you like to share with the others how you help people transition, which you have had some experience in?
Yeah. I do holographic kinetics, which is like regression therapy. And during that process, I work with the spirit, and also have been involved with my own spiritual experiences. So I've had friends and loved ones pass away, and I've been able to help them transition to where they belong. And it's been great in the sense that it's been great in the sense that I know what it's like to feel stuck, or you know, feel that you're not in the right place, and to know that I can actually aid or help someone, and they tend to come to me, or I'll call on them and help them transition to the other side.
And final question, that was the second final question. Final question is, what's your opinion on soul agreements, soul contracts? As far as these experiences, do you feel that was part of your destiny to experience this and share it with others, to sort of break this veil on the
Definitely
locked in prison we are in a 3D, and to sort of give more expanded awareness of our true nature?
Definitely. I feel that there's no coincidence for me going through what I did. If anything, it's made me a stronger person, and it's given me the courage to be up here and talk to everyone and share my story, and I probably will do that until the day I die.
Whatever that is.
And you know, you know, I won't comment on that actually.
Well, I think that's a good place to end that.
Yeah. See, I knew I'd end it really well.
Eventually. Thank you so much, Naomi, for having the courage to share this. I know it's been a big decision for you to make, and not one you've taken lightly. Naomi's not the kind of person seeking the limelight or recognition or anything like this. She's, you know, very modest person, very humble, and has so many gifts that we're going to hear more about this afternoon. Thank you very much for being part of the Paranormal Shift Summit, Naomi.
Thank you.